I didn't want people to think that this was a book about social media influence. I wanted them to think this is about relationships. And relationships require a commitment. It requires a long-term focus, and it requires trust. Trust is really kind of the pivotal core of my book. So you can't have impactful and amazing influence without those things involved.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I'm your host, Christian D. Evans. And guys, we have someone extraordinary on today. And the reason why I want to have him on is because he just published this incredible book. And we're going to be diving into a lot of this. But before we dive into it, I want to share with you kind of a little bit of his background. So he's the CEO of Success Masters, author and serial entrepreneur of 20 plus years businesses, okay? Industries include business networking, online media, e-commerce, intellectual property, a dynamic speaker. He has been recognized as a top presenter, motivating tens of thousands of entrepreneurs, professionals, and salespeople. Prior to his entrepreneurial run, he has spent 25 years as an executive in corporate high-tech and commercial publishing. He is known for his ability to turn around businesses and create dramatic revenue, and he's also his book has been featured and has been recommended by the one and only Kevin Harrington. Please welcome Gary Laney. How you doing, my man?
Hey, Christian, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here today.
Well, hey, I'm really excited as well. And obviously you have a massive resume of what you've been able to do in the industry. However, though, let's kind of dive right into it. Okay. First of all, The Power of Strategic Influence. That's your book. Okay. You just published it, and it's obviously been featured quite a different areas, different places. A lot of people are recommending it. First of all, where did you get the ideas to build this foundation of the book?
Well, appreciate that question. I've been on a lot of podcasts. This is the first time somebody's ever actually asked me that type of a question before. So my background, I spent, as you mentioned, I kind of have three careers really quickly. I'll just give you a summary. So I grew up in a family retail business. My dad owned a chain of retail stores. And so I always say I've got my first MBA from my father by the time I was 20, and so that was a great experience. I spent the next 25 years in commercial publishing and high tech. And then I've spent the last 16, 17 years in entrepreneur kind of ship with 20 different businesses I've been in as far as startups. So for 35 years, I've been teaching influence-based concepts. How do you build relationships? How do you take what you have, what you know, and the people that surround you and make it into something in your life? And it doesn't have to be any specific career, but you can take the components of that and really make something with it. So I probably have to go backward to the days of Stephen Covey. You probably heard of Stephen Covey, who wrote the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I was fortunate to know Stephen back in the late 70s and early 80s. And he was an advisor to a company I was working for. He was not famous back then. When he became famous is Oprah invited him on her show. And she promoted him, as well as a Wall Street Journal column that he got involved with, and then just became famous worldwide. His concepts about how to approach situations with people and how to make it a win-win situation, how to see the end result and work toward it as a group, something I've taught for 35 years. So when I started to write this book, I really didn't know where I was going to go with it. I've been teaching the concepts. I know they've been validated for so long. But it was amazing to me to meet the people that I interviewed for the book. So a little bit of explanation. I wrote this book, 12 chapters, 10 concepts that I call critical success factors. But after each chapter, I interviewed a highly successful global CEO that would kind of match the content or the intent of what that chapter was all about. And so what was amazing to me is how you can start with people that have influence. And when I talk about influence, I talk about positive influence, something that's going to take what you know, who you know, and what your experience you have and use it for a positive gain for all involved. It's not for selfish reasons. It has to be, you'll see the running theme throughout my book is giving back. It's about how to help other people, how to solve problems. If you do that, it comes back to you in kind, very reciprocally. So that's really what it's about. I think that's what you're asking me. But I was, lucky enough to be able to have some time during COVID when my business was shut down, and I started to write a book, and it just kind of magically developed as I wrote it, with some great people to help me do it, and with the great people that I interviewed for it.
Well, and what's interesting is, I think one guy said here, JJ, he says, start your own journey, become a person of greater influence. You won't regret it. When we're talking about influence, obviously we have micro influencers, macro influencers, and the power of it. I think my question isn't, why is it so powerful? It is a matter of how to be intentional nowadays to be the right influence.
Well, you hit the word on the dot, and that is intentional. So we all talk about how important it is to become authentic and genuine in everything you do. Intentional means that you have a purpose and you're doing it for the right reasons, because you have a purpose for doing and developing a relationship. It's not transactional. It's not a one-time event. It's something you want to be long-term that's going to benefit many people. To me, influence, the concept and the topic is a little different than what most people think of, because they'll think of, like you said, the micro, the macro, type of influencers. I put the word strategic in front of influence for the following reason. I didn't want people to think that this was a book about social media influence. I wanted to think this is about relationships. And relationships require a commitment. It requires a long-term focus, and it requires trust. Trust is really kind of the pivotal core of my book. So you can't have impactful and amazing influence without those things involved, without the ability, the building blocks of what I call a trusted partnership. So if you're going to have influence, it has to be intentional. You hit it. Number two, it has to be strongly long-term and with a strategic purpose where everybody involved gets benefit from it. So I'm really looking for a relationship. Let's say that I wanted to promote my business, and I didn't, there's ways to do that. You can spend a lot of money on marketing dollars. You can do email campaigns. You can do advertising campaigns, media, or you can go through influencers, which is a big deal these days. You go to somebody that's famous like The Rock, you pay them a bunch of money. They'll do a spiel for you. They'll put a good word in for you, but you may not ever have met that person. In fact, you probably have not. It was probably arranged by an agency. It was probably done behind the scenes. You never had a connection. For me, strategic means you have to be connected to that person. They have to know what you're talking about. They have to have some industry perspective. And it means that they're going to get involved for the right reasons. I have a good friend that I interviewed for the book. His name is Gary Kennedy. He was the very first president of USA Oracle. Oracle's a big software company, one of the largest companies in the world. And Gary's, we had a great conversation. But the one thing that really came out of our conversation in the interview was that he felt like when he had the opportunity to do something, to get involved on a board as a CEO of a company or on a charitable board, he would always step back and say, well, before I do this, can I make a difference? If I don't have the ability to make a difference for this company and make an impact, I don't care about the money. I don't care about the opportunity. That's my first motive. And that was a great lesson to me. So I think that's, nuts and bolts of influence is how we approach the situation, the type of people that are involved. Are they strategic or not? Are you strategic to them? Is it win-win? And is it going to be something that's going to last beyond the transactional piece of what we today think of as far as an influencer and what they do for companies?
Yeah, one of the biggest stories that I've heard was, I was reading a John Maxwell book, and he was talking about how he was actually a pastor at a church somewhere, and he noticed that he was, even though he was a pastor, he was not influential with the board members, and in fact, he had to actually work with someone that was more influential. And so, what was interesting is that what he would do is he would be very intentional with building a relationship with that person, and then he had the idea, but he would send it to that person because he had the influence to actually make movement. And I love that strategy because that really taught me sometimes you don't always have to be the influencer, right? It is more being influential, but it's really just networking and being strategic authentic with, who that would be, finding that person and being humble and saying, hey, that's okay, as long as the organization, the business, the structure, whatever is moving forward. So my question is, you've developed 10
thepowerofstrategicinfluence.com. So thank you. It's been an honor.
Awesome, guys. And those links will be in the description below. So make sure you go ahead and click on that. Make sure you consume a lot of his content. Make sure you buy that, guys, because the biggest thing is you never want to be one of those people that say, I wish I would have, right? You want to be one of those people that I'm glad I did, right? And the biggest thing is obviously, investing your time and energy into this book. And I'm an audiobook kind of person, so I would definitely consume that audiobook, which is really awesome to fully develop that. Now, also, I always love to ask my guests, okay, is there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience before we let you go?
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, we talked about influence during this whole show, but we didn't talk about really how you acquire influence. You do not self-proclaim that you are an influencer. Some people want to. They want to pay money, put it out there and say, I'm an influencer. It is something bestowed upon you by other people. That's really the last word here. Don't ever assume that you are a leader with reputation or an influencer until you get others telling you that you are. And it's not for ego. It's because they know that they're getting something from it. You know that you're giving to people and you're helping others do it. So I think that's my last word.
Awesome. And guys, that is Gary. Laney, make sure you click on those links in the description below. And that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Until next time, remember, be uncommon if you can.
Hey, stop. This is Christian D. Evans, host of Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. And I just want to say personally, thank you for listening to our podcast. And, if you love what you're hearing right now, please, like this, share this, and show some love to our guest and write a review and, share this with your friend, your family, someone that truly needs it, because at the end of the day, you can make an impact in that person's life by sharing their story with that individual. And again, if you're a new guest, welcome to our community. We're so excited. We're so just honored. And secondly, if you're a returning guest, hey, we appreciate the love. Thank you. Share this with your friend and family. And guys, remember, be uncommon if you can.